Back. My throat is still getting annihilated. I did get a glass of water, though. It was very tasty. Wisconsin water is amazing. You know why? Lake Superior. That's why. The water there, ugh, so good. I even, I've gone down to Milwaukee before, and, I try and drink the tap water. Oh, it's disgusting. Either way, we're now going to move into ways that you deal with this build. This is probably going to be a little bit shorter of a section as I don't have quite as many replays on this. But as Terran, I want to explain, sort of how you break this contain, how you deal with the early adepts. That's sort of I don't know. That's sort of early Protoss strat that I just described in the early portion of the episode. Now, as Terran, you're going to be having a little bit of a hard time early game against the Adepts, as they can deal with Marines fairly easily, they can deal with Reapers fairly easily, and Marauders come out slightly too late to deal with the Adepts. But there are two very, very good things you can do to deal with the Adepts early, and that is one, wall your ramp. This is the ramp to your main at the very least. And number two, just build a bunker, please God. You can salvage it. Get back 75% of what it's worth. Now the reason this works is because Adepts do 0 damage to buildings. It's not 0 damage, but it's not amazing either. It's not very good. They do, plus with their extremely slow attack time, they don't deal very well with bunkers, and that's a huge problem. And as in the same vein, if you wall off your main base, there's no way for them to get in. They can't do any damage. And one of the main downsides of this build is you're spending an extra 150 minerals very early into the game. You know what that means? A later expansion. If you wall off your main and go for a greedy nexus after scouting the second gateway, you have all the liberty in the world to get an earlier economy than your opponent. And what you can do with that is throw on many more units. You can throw on tech structures slightly earlier. You can throw on production structures slightly earlier. And if he tries to do the 2-base contain, there are a lot of things you can do against that too. Widow Mines deal very well with this, as you'll be getting your robo slightly later than you maybe want to, because you'll have a Twilight Council so early. If you get a actually, do I have a replay of this? Because I'm pretty sure I have a replay of this. Pretty sure it's titled Me Getting Wrecked. Oh god. I don't think I do. Either way, it's a it's such a good way to deal with it. Really all you have to do is all you have to do to break the contain is get siege tanks. Siege tank drop is very good against this, because Adepts don't do well against siege tanks. Stalkers take an absolute ton of damage against siege tanks. They do very well against them, but your blink isn't going to be out extremely early because you are investing time into adept shields. So if you get those siege tanks out before the immortals and before blink, you should be able to break the contain very easily with that. Widow Mines are also very good. Upgrades are very good. High Marauder counts are actually very good as well. And you can also shuttle Hellions out of your base and do a lot of harassment damage, as most of the units should be out across the map contributing in the contain. So, there are options to deal with this as Terran. All you have to do is scout the second gateway, and then you have free reign over the rest of the game nearly, because you know what he's doing, you know what he's looking for, and you know what sort of pressure is coming. As long as you have a couple of siege tanks, as long as you have... Even Cyclones are very good against this, as long as you target fire things like the Stalkers and the Immortals. It's not always easy to break the contain, but there are options. There are a lot of things you can do against this. Harassment damage across the map is very strong, because regardless of them, if the mothership recalls the army, you've just broken the contain. If the mothership doesn't recall the army, you're getting damage done at his main base, which will weaken his army, weaken his later tech routes, and when the contain is broken later, you'll have a very distinct advantage. Hell, you could even win straight out with those drops if you do enough damage and he refuses to recall home. It's a very, very strong option from Terran to do some sort of harassment damage. Moving into the Zerg side of things, we have, it's a little bit more difficult. There are slightly less options to deal with this, I would say. Don't go Ravagers. Ravagers are garbage right now. They're really bad units. Essentially, you need to go into Roach Hydra very quickly to hold off the aggression and make him stay outside of your base as much as possible, and then you immediately need to move into Lurkers. Lurkers will zone him out very well, as there is nothing on the map that can deal with Lurkers very well. Blinkstalkers can sort of deal with Lurkers, but as long as you're microing your Roach Hydra ball very well, he won't be able to get close to the Lurkers, and he won't be able to deal with them. Lurkers will push the Protoss back off of your third base, and possibly your fourth base as well if you've taken one. And then the Protoss has to tech in a very specific route to help deal with Lurkers. Tech number 1 is Disruptor, and tech number 2 is Air. And you need to scout and be sure of which route he's going so that you can properly deal with the transition. You can do like these don't go Mass Ling. Mass Ling is awful. Don't go Ling Hydra against it. Ling Hydra is bad. If he just goes Mass Adepts, that deals with that extremely, extremely well. Go a Roach Hydra composition as his Immortals are going to be slightly delayed, and then immediately transition into as many Lurkers as you can squeeze out on the 2 or 3 bases that you should be able to hold. Then once you have the Lurkers, you scout his tech transition, and then you counter that in advance. That's essentially how you deal with it as Zerg. Again, easier said than done, but it is very, very possible. In terms of the Protoss versus Protoss matchup, I would not go this build in PvP. 2-Gate Cyber is okay. I won't say that. You can go 2-Gate Cyber in PvP, but there's a very big catch there. If you're going 2-base Cyber, you have to transition into 4-Gate Adept. There's simply no scooting around that. 4-Gate Adept is the 4-Gate of Wings of Liberty, only now there's nothing to deal with at early game except having more Adepts than him. The good news, you can counter 4-Gate Adept without going 4-Gate Adept yourself. Whereas in Wings of Liberty, if he was going regular 4-Gate, there was no way to counter it except for regular 4-Gate. Now there's options. I'll be covering that in a later weekly, I'll be covering that in a later episode. But for now, just know, don't go this build in PvP, please God. Or at least transition it into 4-Gate Adept, because 4-Gate Adept's really good. I think other builds hit earlier than the 2-Gate Cyber, but I could be wrong. I haven't looked too much into 4-Gate Adept because, frankly, I haven't had the time with prepping for all my shows and stuff. Either way, though, like, it's a very good build. It's a very versatile build. I'll wait for this. I'll ride out the frame droppage. Alright, we've stabilized. We've landed. Either way, this is a very versatile build. It helps Protoss with many, many, many of the problems they had in Heart of the Swarm and Wings of Liberty with early sort of aggressive plays. It helps them move out on the map a lot earlier, helps them trade with armies far sooner, and helps trade armies a lot better without having to rely on higher tier units. Overall, the 2-Gate Cyber is a brilliant build, and it should become the standard build in 2 of the 3 matchups, potentially. It should become the standard in PvT, I would think, as it helps deal with the Reaper, it helps contain the Terran player, and there's so many different ways you can transition out of it. You can transition out of it Twilight, as I showed in this video, which I think, honestly, is probably the best option right now because it allows you to get your Adept Shields and Blink so fast. But you can also transition into Stargate. Stargate is a very strong option afterwards as well because you're forcing a lot of units out with the well, not a lot of units, but a lot of, like, I guess, defense out of the opposing player with Adepts, and then you scoot in with an Oracle, and you're able to do a lot of damage with that as well. That also leads to an air army and air transition, which can be like Mass Void, Ray Tempest Carrier, whatever you want. Actually, Mass Air is really good against mech. I'll have to do a weekly episode on that as well. In PvZ, it's a toss-up, I believe, between Forge Fast Expand, 2-gate Cyber, and a 1-gate Forge Cyber, which I've been experimenting with all 3 builds myself, and I'll do another daily on those in a later date. But yeah, that pretty much covers the build. It's a very, very good build, I believe. It's very solid, it's very strong, it's economical, you're able to do a contain, you're able to transition into harassment, like more harassment later in the game, and it's just an all-around very, very great build. Again, props to Kiwikaki for the wonderful innovations in Legacy of the Void, doing what no man could, making Protoss an aggressive race. Kappa HD. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in to the first episode of Cracking the Shell. So episode ended up a little bit shorter than I had anticipated. I was maybe expecting a few more. If I had had a couple more replays, it would have been a little bit longer. No big deal. But I did promise an AMA at the end of this episode. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to leave them in chat, and I will answer them to the best of my abilities. This VOD will be uploaded to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/antb356, I believe. I need to change the link in my info because it's not correct right now. But yeah, if you have any questions for me, drop them in chat, whether it's about the strategy or just me or anything like that. Be sure to drop a comment. Reaper OP. Actually, no. They're annoying, but they're not OP. You can deal with them pretty well with Adepts. Queens, again, obviously deal with Reapers pretty well. Lings on creep. Reapers deal with Reapers. If you have like 2 or 3 Marines, those can deal with a Reaper. I don't know, like, if you're going the 2-gate Adept build, you'll have 2 Adepts at his base about the time his Reaper hits your base. So you might lose like a probe or 2 while the Mothership Core is coming out, but you might also force the Reaper back to his base with the Adepts, and that leads to a very good position where he's not necessarily scouting what you're doing. So you can go some sort of tech behind that he won't necessarily see. 2-Rax Reaper OP. Against an unprepared Terran, well, okay. It's the same as every other cheese. You scout it, and you do fine against it. You don't scout it, and it's going to be an uphill battle for a very long time. Yeah, 2-Rax, it's a good build as long as you know what you're doing. If you can micro your Reapers well, you're gonna have a good time. 2-Rax Reaper is a lot scarier in Legacy of the Void 2 because you have a lot better economy behind it to back it up. One thing I haven't mentioned is opening double gas. Double gas will delay your second gateway a little, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it also means you can transition Twilight and Stargate and Robo a lot faster, with the drawback being that you get your Adepts later, you get your Nexus later. I've been experimenting double gate into I've been experimenting in gate, double gas, gate, Forge Cyber. So gate, double gas, Forge Cyber, and what that allows you to do is get like ridiculously fast upgrades. You get +2 by like the 5-minute mark or something really stupid like that, and you're just like able to pull off that 2-base contain kind of the same. I've been having a bit of trouble getting out enough units, but I think I just need a macro better, so no big deal. God. Ian, you need to stop calling Rogue Falcon in Skype, man. You just need to stop. Get out of here, Ian. Alrighty, and then... So I think that's honestly going to do it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. The next show will be next week, Monday. I believe I'll be covering a Terran build. It depends on how many Terran players I can get to actually like do this build and like how many Terran friends I have on the ladder and stuff like, or in Legacy of the Void right now, I know there are quite a few people in my clan like Seluge and Thurston, who are very good players who can probably help me out and gather some replays. If I can't gather enough Terran replays, I'll probably just do another Protoss build, potentially like the Gate Forge expand, that sort of thing. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to drop a follow if you haven't already. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, as all of the VODs of the episodes will be up there. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. This episode was slightly shorter than I expected it to be, but still about an hour in length. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time.